blessing. In this video, I am going to be testing this DIY watercolor ground that I learned about from another video that's kind of old. I can't remember the YouTuber's name, but I'll link it in my blog and in the description and the little hubla blah thing down below. So this YouTuber somehow figured out if you mix modeling paste with gesso, you can get a watercolor ground or watercolor effects. So they used the Liquitex modeling paste, at least I'm pretty sure that's what they used, and I think they also used Liquitex gesso. And they tested it with water-based markers and other water-based medias, but they didn't use like actual watercolor. And so I'm taking that same concept and I'm going to be using watercolor pencils, watercolor, and gouache. And I am testing this on 3 different surfaces. I'm going to be testing it on, there's this watercolor paper that I used that I actually painted like an acrylic base layer on top of it, thinking that I was going to actually use it for an acrylic painting, but I never could figure out what to paint on it, so I put my watercolor ground on that. I also have put this watercolor ground on canvas, and we're testing that, and we're testing it on regular drawing paper that is not meant for water media at all. So 3 different tests, really long video, but first let me just show you the quick, like, what I used to make this ground. Okay, so I used, oh well, you can't even see the label. This is Blick Master Gesso. I use this. This is my favorite gesso. Like, it costs, I mean, last I checked it cost like $30. So if you were to buy this at Blick, dickblick.com or whatever, you can buy like maybe like a few tubes of paint, and then you'll be able to get free shipping, because it's always like free shipping on $35 or more. So, because I will not pay shipping for this, because it is heavy, and the only reason why I'm able to hold this like it's nothing is because there's nothing in here. Because when I bought this the first time, I bought 2 gallons of this. I think that's how much is in here, or was. I think this was like a gallon of gesso. So I bought 2 of these because I really didn't want to have to pay the shipping. And I needed some other stuff for like some art stuff. So Blick Master Gesso, it's only sold at Blick's. It's made by Blick's. It's super thick, super white. And I love it because I have seen like other gessos. I've used some of the more expensive gessos a few times because my art professor let us use some of the more expensive gesso when she taught us how to build our own canvases, which is a really great skill to learn if you're trying to pursue acrylic and oil paint. I think it's a really great skill to have. So yeah, Master Gesso by Blick's. Or you can use any gesso, really. I also used the Liquitex, keeps wanting to focus on my face. There we go. I used the Liquitex Professional Flexible Modeling Paste. Be sure it says flexible. Now you're probably wondering, why, wait, hang on. I gotta turn on a light because it's getting a little dark in here. Okay, so you're probably wondering, why do I need flexible or light modeling paste as opposed to regular modeling paste, or I think there's like a super heavy modeling paste too. The thing about flexible modeling paste, and I actually use this for like all my acrylic stuff, is that the flexible stuff, if you use it on surfaces that has the possibility of being bent, or surfaces that kind of have like a more movable type of consistency to them, the flexible stuff won't crack if it bends. So surfaces like paper, or I often paint on canvas without painting it on the without it being on the stretcher bars, or like, I think people use modeling paste for like clay sculptures. Well, the clay sculptures usually aren't the types of things that would require the flexible type of modeling paste. Hang on, I am like not in focus. Why am I not in focus? Sorry, it's bothering me. It's bothering me. It's bothering me. So like paper, canvases that aren't already stretched, and just things like that, stuff that could warp, is better. Poster board is better to use the flexible, or some brands call it light modeling paste, or just get the like light stuff. So, and the reason why I recommend this so much is because we're going to be using like watercolor. We're trying to do like watercolor stuff on unstretched canvas, regular drawing paper, and like what used to be watercolor paper, but it's got an acrylic base coat on it now. So that those are surfaces that kind of require the flexible stuff. I also have tried the Liquitex Professional regular modeling paste, and that works really well too. It's a lot thicker and stiffer than the flexible kind. But in my like experience, I only used it on like this wood panel piece that I made. This was 5 years ago that I did it. So I wasn't worried about anything cracking because wood is very like sturdy and stable. So that's just what I know about modeling paste, and it's what I think it's on the jar itself. Oh, and it says used to build heavy textures and 3D forms on flexible or rigid supports. So yeah, so you won't have to worry about anything cracking. And I get the professional kind. That's the one that looks all like, like all official, compared to like, they have like a basics line of mediums, of paint, of things like that. So it'll say like basics in all caps or whatever. But I think they actually changed their logo recently. But it'll say basics somewhere. I get the professional kind because it is of a thick consistency that I like. Also, like, I trust it. Like, I'm not saying I don't trust the basics, but in terms of like consistency, time and time again, the professional Liquitex mediums have really knocked it out of the park for me. And I feel that with the more student grade version of mediums, I feel like you're not getting that type of quality that you're expecting. So like with modeling paste, and I haven't used the basics modeling paste, if the basics even has a modeling paste. I know they have like gel mediums and stuff, but I know that with the professional mediums, it's the same consistent quality every single time, and I don't have to worry about like using a ton of it to get the results that I want, because that's the big difference I've noticed with like even student grade acrylics versus artist grade acrylics, and like student grade mediums and artist grade mediums, is that with the student grade mediums you have to use a lot more than you think you need, because in order for it to get to that like thickness or level that the artist grade medium does right out the box. So it's like, you think that you're not spending a lot of money on a student grade medium, but then after about a month of using it, it's already gone. Whereas with artist grade mediums, you don't use a lot of it because it's so like thick and rich, and in this case the modeling paste is actually really creamy, and so you don't use a ton of it, so by the end of the month you still have like half a jar to like 2/3 of a jar, which is like a lot, you know? So that's why I use the professional kind. If you want to use the student grade basics modeling paste, or like we have a Hobby Lobby here, and I know that Liquitex as well as Hobby Lobby has their own brand of like paste and mediums and stuff. Use whatever you can get your hands on, but if you are buying the professional like the professional stuff, I recommend buying the largest amount that you can afford if the modeling paste is something that you feel you have to use in your acrylic stuff. Because I use this all the time in all of my acrylic stuff, so I buy the largest that I can afford at the time. But if this is just something that you're just testing out and you have no idea if you're going to like it or not, I recommend buying, I think the smallest is like an 8-ounce jar, which is like little. In fact, I think this is about as big as it is. And this was a Liquitex product, but I tore the sticker off because it's not said Liquitex product anymore. This is what I put my ground inside of. Okay, so this is my control. This is my control paper. This was done on the Canson XL paper. I know that paper is really not the best in terms of watercolor. In fact, I know a lot of watercolor artists hate that paper, but it is all that I have because I didn't want to use my Strathmore 300 series just for the purpose of testing. Because that paper is a lot more expensive, and that particular pad of paper was given to me by a friend. So this is my control. As you can see, I am not a watercolor artist by any means or any stretch of the imagination. But I am trying to do it because I would like to do paintings outside. And even though I have my own like Stay Fresh acrylic paletto, it's just kind of a lot to like carry those giant tubes of paint everywhere and whatnot. So this is what this looks like. As you can see, I did the watercolor pencil sketch of the chicken, but if you can look, you can kind of see I also did some graphite sketches, and I have ink, India ink, because I wanted to see how this watercolor ground will react with 3 different types of mediums. And the background is just a bunch of eggs. And I tried doing some glazing and I completely failed at it. I am no Brian Ashmore. But, like, I kind of just... At first I was just going to do, like, a chicken, but it just bothered me so much, because this was my first sketch, actually. It just bothered me so much that there was so much white space that I had to fill it with something. So this is the control. This right here is actually on the Strathmore 300 series paper, but I had a sheet, which is this sheet, where I painted some leftover acrylic on it because I didn't want to waste paint. But then I never actually did like an actual painting on top of it, because that was the idea, to just put something on there and then, you know, later on I'll paint something. I never painted anything. So I put my watercolor ground on top of it, and so you can see here, it does do, oh, hang on. Sorry, I haven't filmed in a while and my filming setup is very different. There we go. As you can see here, it does do lifting really well. I tried doing like basic glazing, but I don't think with any of the surfaces, I don't think I let the original watercolor dry long enough. So this right here was with my watercolor pencils. This was with my basic watercolors, and this is with my gouache. So for this particular test or paper, the watercolor pencils were by far the lightest, and if you can see, yeah, y'all can see that. You can really see the texture of my brush strokes with all three of these tests. And we'll be painting like the chicken and whatnot in a little bit. So you can see the texture of my brush strokes through all three of these tests because I used a hog hair bristle brush to put this down, to put down my watercolor ground. And so if you don't want your texture to show, I recommend either putting your watercolor ground down with a soft like nylon bristle brush or a golden Taklon brush. Just be sure to clean it afterwards because those types of brushes really aren't meant to hold gesso. Or you can take like a fine grit sandpaper and just like do little circles so that the texture of the brush strokes won't show. I personally don't mind it because I paint very expressionistic with a lot of abstraction anyway, so I think it's pretty cool. So that's what the little swatches on the, I guess you could say it's on top of water paper that's on top of acrylic base looks like. This here is on top of cheap Walmart canvas. In fact, this is a little distracting. We'll get to that one in a little bit. But this here is on cheap Walmart canvas. My mama likes to buy the canvases because she likes to take the canvas off and use the wooden frame for her looms. And I don't usually do paintings that I'm trying to sell on this type of canvas unless I put my gesso on top of it because the canvas are pretty cheaply made and the paint doesn't really respond well to it. Acrylic, anyway. So the reason why this looks a bit of a mess is because I actually also use this cheapo canvas for like craft projects. So as you can see, I've cut out, there's like bits and pieces just cut out. In fact, this whole seam right here, I actually mounted this splotch onto this and sealed it all with my watercolor ground. Cause I don't like to waste things. And so I was like, well, it's canvas. This is canvas and that's canvas. So we'll just do it together and see what happens. That's why it's all wrinkly and that's why there's holes over here. You know, when I'm testing things, I really don't care about much except what is I'm actually testing for. So y'all can excuse all of that. Let's look at these swatches. I feel on the canvas, my watercolor pencils were a bit more saturated. So I thought that was pretty cool because I think with canvas in particular, because it already has gesso on it, so if you add more gesso mixed with the modeling paste, which is how I made my ground, it's just like a perfect harmony. Because I know whenever I am doing my own paintings, if I do gesso my canvas, which I don't do all the time, but if I do, I add modeling paste on top of that. So after the gesso dries, I put the paste on top of that for my collages, and it kind of, the colors do start looking this bright, is what I'm trying to say. So it responded well to my watercolor pencils. I think it also responded well to my regular watercolors. And I really like how the gouache looks on top of it. The gouache looks very bright. And they look bright on my other paper too that I just showed y'all. But I think they just look a bit more brighter here. And I don't know why that is, but if I had to guess, it's because of this being canvas. So lastly, we have, this is just regular drawing paper that I put the ground on top of. And by regular drawing paper, I mean it's paper that is only meant to handle dry media. And I know this because I did do some watercolor swatches on like just the regular paper without the ground, and it wrinkled up pretty badly. It didn't peel, but it did wrinkle up pretty badly. So I think I decided to try it on this paper because like regular drawing paper is like the cheapest paper you can buy at, like, you know, we have a Hobby Lobby here, so you can like buy it. And so I thought my mentality behind it was if this test on this paper were to work, then I could just go buy or even use my regular drawing paper. Then I can put the ground on top of it and have like a whole bunch of watercolor paper. That's super cheap and like it's using what I already have, honestly. So if you look at these swatches, sorry, this is my biggest paper, so we're gonna have to do a bit of a carousel effect or whatever. I do think my watercolor pencils were very vibrant on here. With these regular watercolors, I will admit my two reds that I use in all three of these tests or whatever, the two reds that I use are from a really old set of watercolors that I have had since I was like 10 years old. So it's not like the most pigmented of watercolors. It's like an off-brand. I don't know what brand it is, but the watercolors still work. And so that's why the two reds in each of these aren't like super vibrant. But the watercolors I used over here are from this paletto that some art major at my college, because I still live in the town that I went to college at, was fixing to toss this paletto and another paletto. And I found out that this paletto has watercolors on it. These are all watercolor paints. The other was acrylic, so I've been peeling it up. So I think these are regular watercolors, so not like craft watercolors like these reds. And if I had to guess, in my honest opinion, I think the watercolors in this paletto are the Daler Rowney Simply watercolors, aka the Walmart watercolors, because Daler Rowney, for whatever reason, they have like a whole bunch of Walmart stock or whatever of like acrylic, oil, and watercolor stuff. So I think that's what these colors are. So I used those colors for like the blues and the yellows. And I think compared to my other two swatches, I don't think these are as even as the other two. Because when I laid down color on the other two, the swatches, like they're all very bright, very vibrant. But on the other two, the swatches, even though the surface is textured, I think I got more of an even lay down. Whereas with these ones, it's just, like, I don't really know, like, what is up with these blues, why they have, like, little dots in them, because I don't think it's granulation, because I've been using these watercolors and, like, actual watercolor paper, and I've never gotten, like, granulation, so I'm not really sure about it on just regular drawing paper. And this is what the gouache looked like, and I really like how the gouache turned out. I think it's pretty bright, but as a whole, I really like it the best on the canvas, but we'll have to see when we actually paint, like the chicken, because I feel the best way to judge, like, the whole quality of this test is, like, okay, well, how does it look when you paint? How does it look when you layer with it and glaze with it and do, like, techniques? And, oh, by the way, like, the lifting technique, it worked beautifully on all three of these surfaces. Oh, and excuse my nails. I know there are people that are very critical about nail polish when you're doing a video with your hands. I don't have any nail polish remover, and I don't like the idea of, like, you know, scratching at the nails to get them off. So forgive my nails, and I'm sorry if my hands are that offensive. So we're just gonna go and paint these now. But I hope that at least this little intro helps somewhat. You can see we have here a chicken loosely drawn from photo reference. Then we have chicken going to his first punk rock concert. And then we have chicken that has seen some things, you know. Or whatever caption you have for this chicken, let me know in the comments. So I'm going to start with a background. I want to just do, like, basically what I did on my sample sheet and have, like, a bluish purple background. So I'm going to be covering this chicken and that chicken in the purple and leaving this one as the yellow chicken because that one is the focal point. Alrighty. Though I am starting to run out of red with my cheapo set. Like, let me show you this cheapo set before we even get started. My first ever set of watercolors. As you can see, like, there's holes and whatnot here because it broke when I was moving out of my college dorm 4 years ago. But I glued it all back together thanks to E6000 glue, and I lost 2 colors in the process. But yeah, my first ever set of watercolors. I got them when I was 10, and as you can see, the colors are kind of still in there because I didn't know that watercolors required watercolor paper. I was using printer paper for my watercolors and got frustrated with said watercolors because I didn't like the results I was getting. But I'm almost out of reds, and like there was only like maybe 2 or 3 dollops of red in this, and I used them all. So actually, I was gonna use this color. I was gonna use this color right here, but I'm thinking maybe that color would be a better choice because I'm going to use, like, this color first, let it dry, then glaze this blue on top. So I think this would be, this would be a better color choice. It's like a reddish violet. So let me spritz that. Hang on just a minute. I need my spritz. Oh. That's okay. I'm not very fussy when it comes to things like that. Though, to be perfectly honest, it didn't land right on the chicken, so I really wanted to do this because I want to participate in World Watercolor Month. I just don't really have the money for watercolor paper. And that's like the most important thing when it comes to watercolors. And I get that. I totally get that. I've seen the videos from the more seasoned watercolor artists, and they're like darn good. Because a lot of them have been painting for like longer than I've been alive, you know? And so I want to participate in World Watercolor Month, but also I want to get into watercolors because it's like the most friendly medium for like urban art and painting on the go, because I'm trying to like get out of the house more. And I love my acrylics and I'll always be an acrylic artist. But I really want to get out of the house, and I guess it's probably because of the whole quarantine situation, but I'm starting to feel like I'm trapped, and that's just not healthy for anybody. So I want to get out of the house, and the best way for me to get out of the house is by creating artwork, so that it doesn't feel like I'm not doing anything. Though I do play Pokemon Go a lot when I am out of the house as well. So I just, I'm trying to do what I can. And like I said, these cheapo watercolors that I have aren't very pigmented. So there's that. Oh, I already see. It's not handling the ink very well. It's actually smearing with the ink. This is actually dry. This dried like maybe 2 days ago, and it's like coming right back up. I thought I was going to be able to do this with Inktober, but I probably can't use ink with this ground. Or maybe it's just the paper in general. It's smearing my graphite too. Huh. Well, that's interesting. I didn't think that would happen. So I guess what I would have to do in the future is use like a fixative. Yeah, ooh, look at that. Because see, it's supposed to be very vibrant like that, but it's looking pretty bad right there. Well, that's what testing is, so maybe if I use less water. I'm glad I'm testing it and I'm not doing like a finished piece. So clearly, when I am like out in the wild, it'd be better to just paint with either, I could use my watercolor pencils or just plain old watercolor. And I was planning on just using plain old watercolor anyway, so no problems there. But I just wanted, out of curiosity, I wanted to see how does it react to graphite and ink. Or it could, no, I was using India ink, so it really shouldn't be that. India ink is waterproof. Okay, let's see how it will test out on the canvas. I might end up having to change my shade of red because I'm almost out of this red-violet color in this cheapo watercolor set. Though I might be going a little overboard with the water. How does it look on here? Yeah, that is too much water. Maybe I should have just used glycerin on top of this. Yeah, see, the ink is starting to pop up here too. You see the little white splotches? That's not good. Yeah, so if I want to use ink or graphite, I would either have to use a fixative spray or I would have to just fork over the dough and buy regular watercolor paper, which I know there's a lot of people who like to draw out what they're trying to do before they paint it. So I would suggest, if you're trying to do your own watercolor ground, you might just have to draw everything out with watercolor pencil and then paint it. Or, you know, like I said, use a fixative. Though I'm not sure how does watercolor react when placed on top of a fixative. I don't have any fixatives on me. And I don't have any hairspray either, so I can't, like, test it. But yeah, you can see the more redder areas aren't being smeared by the ink of this egg right here. And this egg, oh, ooh, that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. I'm trying to get as much pigment as I can, but it's kind of difficult because this watercolor is pretty cheap. It doesn't have a lot of pigment to it. Let me go get the next one. I just hope I don't get a bunch of comments telling me how much I fail at art. Like, you guys are aware that this is just a test, right? And the reason why I chose purple for the background is because that's the complement to yellow. And it just looks really good together. Oh, and this particular sheet has these little, like, textured bits in it. I did that on purpose. I normally have, like, little textured bits of dried up paint that I kind of just stick in random places. Or sometimes it's not so random, but, you know. Y'all can't really see over there. I don't think the graphite's really smearing, though, on this paper. Let's see about the ink. I was not expecting the ink to reactivate like this. I felt like the graphite would smear. Yeah, the ink is sort of reactivating. You see it in these little triangles. I know I'm in a corner, but let me show you guys. See, these triangles were purely black and now they have these little dots in them. That's reactivating. But I guess it probably does that because this is mixed with gesso, and you're not... What I know, whenever I'm working with acrylics, if you happen to be working on a gessoed surface, all the acrylic painters recommend you put fixative on top of your graphite stuff so that it doesn't smear. So I probably should have thought of that, probably should have done it, but, you know. So I just wanted to say before I continue this, yes, I know it looks like a hot mess, but I also want to say, I think the reason why the ink has been smearing is because the pigment of the India ink didn't settle into the surface, and I think I probably didn't let it dry as long as I should have. Either that or the first option that I said, because it takes India ink a while to dry when it's not on just regular paper. So that might be why it smeared, but I also wanted to correct myself in saying I thought the graphite was what was smearing. It wasn't the graphite. It was just the ink. The graphite did not smear because I had to remind myself that if you put a light wash of watercolor on top of graphite, it won't smear. I did that experiment in a different blog several months ago. So I just wanted to say those things. And I did do my glazing. I know it doesn't really look like it, but I had a light red wash of color, then I put this blue wash on top of it, so now we have this purple color. So we're just going to finish these paintings, and I don't really think I'm gonna like talk to you guys while I do this. I think I'm just gonna like put on some music. And I know for this one, sorry, I'm chewing gum. I'm fixing to spit it out. But for this one, I'm gonna do it real time. And for the other ones, I would like I want to show like real time clips. I'm trying not to do like time lapsey things because I think real time clips are just better. And if there's something that I feel I need to say, I'll just say it. So that's what I'm gonna do now. As you can see, I'm kind of working on all three of these simultaneously. Probably not the best idea, but it's what I'm doing anyway, because I hate just sitting and watching paint dry, so I'm like, I have 3 paintings I have to do, so they have to get done some kind of way. So this is the second one, as you can see, I think this one, the ink in this one smeared the most, and the ink in, let me show you. This is the one that was on drawing paper. There we go. The ink in this one smeared the least, so that's something to take note of. Anyway, let's get to this one. And I'm just doing like the base coat stages of these. We're like nowhere near being finished. So I'm back again. And I also just want to say that, okay, what was I going to say? Oh, I am thinking, based on working, this is my third test or whatever, I do think that this watercolor ground thing actually does work. Because as you can see, even like these two were light washes, so I did one light wash of red, one light wash of blue. So clearly it layers. I don't know how much though, because I know several artists, they like layer on top of layer on top of layer, so you have this like whole bioluminescent thing going on. Don't know how many layers it can handle, but you can do layers and you can lift. And as you can see in the clips, like the watercolor pencil reactivates beautifully. Even in the first test where, because of the colors I used, the whole bottom part of the chicken looks very brown, so it looks like something else. We're gonna have to fix that. But I do like the way the watercolor looks and reacts with the surface. So I do believe that yes, this does work, but I still feel that I would have to do a lot more testing. Probably have to do more testing to find the perfect modeling paste to gesso ratio, as well as do testing with like sandpaper to see if sanding down the surface will give it that full-on watercolor look. Because in all three of these tests, like, you can see the brush strokes, and I know that I don't have a problem with that, and I actually do think it gives my watercolors some character that I feel lacks in like the watercolors that I see. But I know that there are a lot of like realistic watercolor painters and painters who paint in a way that's a lot more representational. Like, they're not gonna, that's the problem. They're not gonna like things like that. So I mean, I would say sand your surface down before painting on it. But then again, I don't know for sure if even that will work. So that's like a whole nother test that I'll have to try. But as a whole, I do believe this does work. I actually am really proud of myself. Even though all three of them look vastly different from each other. We'll talk about that at the end of the video. I do really like what I've done, and I do see myself creating like a watercolor block or just more of my own watercolor paper, because I didn't think this was gonna work at all. I really didn't think this was gonna work, but I am really proud of myself. Okay, so I am now switching over to my gouache because in my control I actually did switch over to my gouache to make these expressive feathers. I added an extra layer or two to the beak, and I added a bit more yellow because in that, it's in the other room now, but in the white paletto that I showed y'all with the watercolors that college student was fixing to toss out, I actually used, you can see it here, I used more of a cool type of yellow for the lighter parts of my baby chick, and I kind of am almost out of it. So I figured if I use this yellow and add a bit of this zinc white, I can, like, you know, because I did it here in, like, little areas. I need to do that to, like, flesh out the rest of these. So that's what I'm going to do now. And I am turning these upside down for, like, because when I turn my stuff upside down, it helps me to, like, see things better. I know that's really weird, but it helps me to see things better. And also with my, like, ink drawings, I would like to fix them up with my gouache paint and then use my black, I think this is ivory black, I think, to, like, sort of just fix them up. Let's move it. Yeah, so we're just gonna do that. And when I do that, I'm like almost done. I still need to fill in the eyes though. We'll just do that last. But I'm almost done, and I have a lot to say in my, like, final thoughts of this whole test. But as a whole, I am very impressed, and yes, I will be incorporating this into my World Watercolor Month thing. So, that's good. Okay, so, like, it's the end of the video. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. Thank you for watching. And my final thoughts of everything, I feel like the results that look closest to my control paper on the Canson XL were definitely the results I got on the canvas and the results I got on the regular drawing paper. And I know at the beginning I was kind of like putting down the color swatches I got on the regular drawing paper because it just didn't look even enough. But the more I look at all three of them, the color swatches really didn't give me the best picture for what, like, I was hoping for, you know? Which is why whenever I'm testing, I like to actually just do a painting, because I feel like I get the most experience by doing a painting. So, that being said, putting the ground on canvas and putting the ground on regular drawing paper looked the best, but I think that's because I didn't already have an acrylic coat of paint underneath those two surfaces. Because on the watercolor paper that had the acrylic on it before I put the watercolor ground on it, the acrylic paint was I laid it on very thickly because this was just leftover paint from my paletto. So it's like I just laid it on, it was super thick, and there were like brush strokes and brush marks everywhere, because normally whenever I paint with acrylics, I like that. I really like the brush strokes and the texture. And I mean, I like that with any medium, using a whole lot of texture and stuff. But with watercolors, you really want it to be like an even type of thing. So I think that particular piece was the most abstract, and I like it. But I know that's not what people are trying to get in terms of watercolor. They want something that looks more like my other two tests. And I get that, because I like the way those two turned out as well. I'm actually quite surprised and proud of myself for the fact that even though I was struggling pretty badly and I was doubting myself, I continued on and I kept layering and layering until I got all three to the point where I was like, okay, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. So, that being said, I feel if you want to try this, you can, but I highly recommend, if you're going to do it, don't put the ground on top of something that already has like a whole bunch of texture and like acrylic stuff on it already. Because while that could be great for like, you know, layering up your acrylics, you don't really get the best results with watercolor unless maybe you sand everything down, but that could use a whole lot of sandpaper. So I'm so glad that I did this. I'm thankful that y'all made it to the end of the video. If you would like to see more from me, you should join my Palomas de Paz email list. We're a small little community, and by joining that community, you get invited to our Facebook group. But also, I post blogs as often as I can. I got behind because of the thing that's happening in the world. but I mainly hang out on my website and my Facebook group and like all of that stuff. YouTube is just like just another way to see me, basically. So you know, link is in the description, the hubla blah down below. Um, and that's it. Thank you for watching. Let me know which one of these chickens was your favorite. I don't really have a favorite. I like all three of them, actually. And I'll definitely, I'm going to be doing more videos and stuff because I'm participating in the World Watercolor Month, which is what inspired this entire deep dive. Because I really wanted to do watercolors because I couldn't do Watercolor Month last year. But I wanted to like be able to participate without having to use a ton of money, you know, because I don't really have that kind of money. And I know the most important thing to watercolor is the paper that you use. Yeah, so thank you for watching, and I hope to see y'all soon. Adios!